Welcome to the House of Peace. I just want to say a few words about this great event today. Thank you so very much for coming to the House of Peace at the occasion of my 95th birthday, which is really a historical day. The purpose of this birthday celebration can only be one, namely to express my gratitude to all my friends who have been helpful during the past year or past years. I would like to thank Karen and her dear husband, Ken. I am grateful to Karen for 37 years of friendship and help. On my 50th birthday, 45 years ago, my dear wife Margie, whose pictures you can see here, received her cancer diagnosis and prognosis and the date for her operation. On her way to my 50th birthday celebration in the Red Brick Inn in Plainwell on Friday, October 1st, 1977, Margie made all kinds of arrangements for the future of our family in case her cancer operation would fail and she would not survive and have to leave us. Margie hoped most of all that a friendly person would come along to help us with our family of 7 children in the House of Peace at 630 Piccadilly Road, where we are right now. The friendly person was the ideal of our famous playwright Bertolt Brecht, which had migrated from the Gospels into the secular plays, like for instance Mother Courage. Margie and I adopted this ideal of the friendly person as our family ideal. The restaurant in which we then celebrated my 50th birthday, the Red Brick Inn, has disappeared since and survives today only in my 3-volume manifesto. After Margie had died in London, Ontario on October 20th, 1978, after we had buried her in the Mountain Home Cemetery in Kalamazoo, it was first of all my son Steve who helped us with the household with 8 family members and usually a guest student from 1978 to 1985. Steve was a genius in all parts of home economics, cooking, cleaning, buying, selling, and so on. He was a great organizer. The family could not have done without him. He helped with all matters of the family up to the time when he left for the law school in Toledo in 1985. He was really the first friendly person his mother Margie had envisioned and wished for. He continued to help out later on as well, whenever he had time, up to his own cancer death in September 19th of September 2019. Steve had no family of his own. We were the only family he ever had. The Japanese cherry tree out there in front of the House of Peace remembers Steve lovingly and his great work for our family. Even during his final illness, Steve still gave us good ideas for the reconstruction of our House of Peace. After Steve had left in 1985, and Agnes would leave soon as well for nursing school, I had to find a new friendly person to help with the family and the household at 630 Piccadilly. In the fall semester 1985, I asked at the end of my large psychological elements in religion class for help. Karen alone stood up and came to the front of the class and volunteered for the job. Soon she moved into the basement room of the House of Peace. That lasted until a mouse appeared in the basement room and Karen had to move up into a room on the first floor. Karen took over all the work Steve had done before. In addition, Karen helped with the finances the taxes, and finally also with the academic work. Karen accompanied me on my teaching trips to Jerusalem, Athens, Rome, Berlin, and Paris. Later on, when I could not walk any longer, Karen and Ken pushed my wheelchair through Rome and the whole Vatican, and through Paris and the whole Louvre. Most of my later books would not have come into existence without Karen's research and editing work. At this time, September 2022, Karen and I are authoring a book together, which has its roots in the course which Karen took in fall of 1985. The very difficult book is entitled The Psychological Elements in Religion and the Religious Moments in Psychology, Origin and Dialectic of the Authoritarian and the Democratic Personality. The book must continually be reconstructed because of the always changing war and events in the Ukraine, in which authoritarian and democratic characters and movements are struggling with each other. Karen, who had a master in university administration, appeared even at Western Michigan University at critical moments. For instance, when I had to face investigations by the Western Michigan University administration. At one occasion, Karen gave an excellent, most effective speech, an apologia to the investigators, in which she counted up all my so-called good works. No defense attorney could have done a better job. Karen engaged successful campaigns for the pavement of Piccadilly Road outside and the restoration of our family bank in the nearby public park, where I continually travel with my electric wheelchair. Karen convinced the city of Kalamazoo that the bank had to be back before my birthday, and so it happened. In cooperation with Bill, our great architect, Karen continually promoted the reconstruction of the House of Peace in the past 2 decades. Karen was our most effective and feared finance minister. Without Karen and Ken, I could not possibly have taught up into my 90s and do research even longer. Nobody in my family ever did that. Ken drove me daily to campus, and while I taught, he made friends with the Saudi students who liked him much better than me. During one investigation, the Western Michigan University administration thought even that Ken was teaching all my classes. So good he was. Ken brought an original sculpture of the great thinker of modernity, Hegel, from Berlin to the House of Peace. It is in the other room. Ken even put the name of Hegel, a persona non grata in America, on our car license plate for everybody to see. Karen encouraged and supported our educational work from the home base and kept our morale high. Karen did all this while at the same time taking me to innumerable doctoral and hospital visits. In recent years, Karen helped to make the House of Peace into a most ideal retirement home in which I could enjoy my golden years without stopping to be creative, writing books and chapters and doing academic Zoom discourses. In Karen, Margie had indeed found a most friendly person to help the family, far beyond all her expectations. It is impossible to thank Karen, like Margie, adequately for her daily work through over 73 years. Like Margie, Karen does indeed deserve to be canonized, and they both will be, even if priests, bishops, and popes should forget about it, as they usually do. I am most grateful to my friend Bill Koza and his dear wife Ellen. Bill added the south wing and then the north wing and the hallway in between to the old structure, which built by an immigrant Dutch architect in the 1950s. It became a truly Trinitarian structure which invites meditation. By now, the inside and the outside of the House of Peace has been completed. During the almost 2 decades of our cooperation, Bill and I had many most interesting discourses about architecture as the basis of all other arts, like sculpture, painting, music, and poetry, including epics, lyrics, and drama, comedy, and tragedy. The House of Peace contains all these arts, starting with the fact that Margie had been a great pianist and organist who practiced her art of music from the start in all 4 houses we owned, 2 in Germany and 2 in the United States. Most of all and longest in our last home, the House of Peace in Kalamazoo. I learned much from Bill during these years in theory and praxis in our many discourses. For me, Bill is another Leonardo da Vinci, a Renaissance man. His Trinitarian House of Peace has great meaning and is wonderful to live in. Its use value is much more important than its exchange value. Thank you, Bill, for your great work. I'm also most grateful to Michelle Bosch, who unfortunately could not make it tonight, and her husband for her great work of art, the dove, which you saw when you came in front of the House of Peace. The image is taken from the organic world, from biology, but symbolizes the spiritual world. It is the dove which Noah saw returning to the ark, announcing the recession of the flood and the end of judgment. It gives us hope that also our own pandemic will end soon. It is also the dove which appeared above Jesus' baptism by his teacher John in the Jordan, which symbolizes the Holy Spirit. Karen and I once visited the place at the Jordan. Michelle put the dove into a triangle, which symbolizes the Divine Trinity, which is present in many world religions and philosophies, from Taoism, the religion of measure, through Hinduism, the religion of imagination, and the Greek religion of beauty and faith, and the Gothic religion of blood and soil, to Christianity, the religion of becoming, freedom, and manifestation. The tree on the bottom of the work of art, Bill and Michelle took for my Christmas cards. They represent the world of nature, flowing out of and emanating from the Trinitarian divinity. The rainbow is taken from the Jewish and Christian apocalypse, where it encircles the throne of the Eternal One, who makes all things new, the new heaven and the new earth and the new Jerusalem. The rainbow 7 colors symbolize peace, harmony, and the reconciliation of the divinity with itself and with the world of nature and with the human world, with individuals and nations as they elevate themselves to God, who is in the world as the world is in him. The rainbow remains my sons and daughters of their brother Steve whenever it appears in the sky. My neighbors love the great work of art, and they try to understand it and to comprehend it. Thank you, Michelle, and you will get this, she will get this speech here for your most wonderful and meaningful work of art, which sends a great message of reconciliation to all the people who pass by the House of Peace now and in the decades to come. I also would like to thank very much Ellen, the wife of Bill and the friend of Michelle, for her great contribution to the work of art, the dove, in front of the House of Peace. Ellen has been a friend of our family for many years. She was, therefore, like Bill, very familiar with the spirit of the House of Peace, expressed in the work of art in the dove. Ellen could therefore contribute to it by using her great skill in glasswork. Ellen chose and cut the colorful glass to hold together and thus beautify the whole work of art. Thank you, Ellen, for your wonderful contribution. I would like also to thank David for helping me and the Siebert family with all their legal work and for all his good counseling through many discourses in the House of Peace. David often informed me about the history of Kalamazoo, its politics, and its religious life. Often David told me the story of his dear father, who was a professor of philosophy and of theology at Nazareth College for over 40 years. He was a true man of justice. I saw him standing up for the poor in the city in public meetings. I saw him telling the people what was the right thing to do in the name of Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. David, as a lawyer, followed very much in his father's footsteps. When we had crisis in Western Michigan University, David was always ready to help. He appeared in my Western Michigan University investigations. He finally wrote a decisive letter when the Obama sanctions forbid me to direct my international course on the religion and civil society in the Ukraine, in Kiev, and in the Crimea, in Yalta, in Simferopol, and to give my papers and to sign the certificates for 250 Russian and Ukrainian professors, one even coming from Siberia, and to administer an exchange contract which we had established between Western Michigan University and the University of Sevastopol, the harbor of the Russian Navy in the Black Sea. Thank you, dear David, for all your great, most helpful work through the years. I would like to thank my great former student and now Professor Dustin Bird and his dear wife Jamie and the little ones, of which Alexander is one. Tonight, Dustin represents all of my students, old and young. Dustin and I mastered together Hegel's dialectic during his studies for his master in the Western Michigan University Department of Comparative Religion and for his PhD in the philosophy department of Michigan State University in East Lansing, where also Karen had studied. We traveled together to Croatia and Rome and the Crimea and read papers. We landed in the Moscow airfields, which the invading European troops reached in December 1941 and suffered their first defeat in a battle in which 10 million men were involved and fighting against each other at the same time and at the same place, before fascism was ultimately beaten in Stalingrad and Kursk and Berlin and in the Normandy. Dustin helped me to edit my books and chapters in other authors' books. Finally, Dustin established his own publishing house, the Ex-Pyrosis Press, in which he can now and has already published progressive books of Mid-Eastern, European, and American authors. His business goes well. I thank Dustin for all the academic Zooms he organized. I thank him for all his enlightenment about the Russian history and recent situation. I am most grateful for my second international Festschrift, as the Germans call it, the Critique of Religion and Religious Critique on Dialectical Religiology, which Dustin collected and organized and edited. It is a masterpiece. I thank Dustin and Jamie for their friendship and help through many years. I would like to thank also Father Paul, who will come a little bit later. He has still something to do in his church, from St. Thomas More Parish at Western Michigan University. I thank him already for the blessing of our great work of art, which he will do a little bit later. St. Thomas More Parish has been our spiritual home since 1965. For the first 12 years, Margie played the organ in St. Thomas More Parish on every Sunday. Thomas More, the great Christian humanist and Chancellor of Henry VIII, was martyrized together with John Fisher by their former friend Henry. St. Thomas More has always been the patron saint of our House of Peace, which has also always been a house of learning and home for over 30 students from different disciplines and countries who lived here and worked here for their degrees. 60 years ago, I wrote my dissertation in the University of Mainz about the great Catholic and Protestant humanists like Erasmus of Rotterdam, Thomas More, Michael Helling, and so on, who in the last moment tried to rescue the union of the Western Church. Thomas had to wait 400 years for his canonization because he married too fast again after his first wife had died. Thomas was too used to let go and therefore to have too much humor that he would have been bothered by such late canonization. Thomas, the good Catholic, would have understood the meaning of our work of art, the dove and its blessing. Father Paul's uncle from the Redmond family in Kalamazoo gave us shelter when we arrived from Baltimore in Kalamazoo in August 1965 and found out that the house was underwater, which the very conservative Father John Harden, my predecessor at Western Michigan University, had rented for us right at the downtown railroad tracks. We lived with Mr. Redmond, whose wife had just died from a long heart ailment, for several months until we found the later House of Peace. Mr. Redmond was indeed a good Samaritan. So is his relative, Father Paul. We thank Father Paul and all the previous priests at Thomas More Parish for the good work they have done for generations of students and for us as a family for 6 decades. Thank you, Father Paul. I would like to include into my gratitude all the many friends, unmentioned so far, who have contributed to the House of Peace and Learning since 1965, most of all of those who have cooperated with Karen and her wonderful care for me and the House of Peace. Please choose a copy of the books on the table, whichever you want and whichever you don't have yet, as a token of my gratitude. In conclusion, I would like to offer a toast in honor of all of you and in the hope that the House of Peace will remain a home of learning for many good friends in the days to come. A toast to all of you.
Cheers.
That's my first wine since 50 years. In conclusion, I would like to, now enjoy the good meal which Ken and Karen have cooked yesterday and today have prepared for us. Thank you, Karen and Ken, once more. Enjoy.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Rudy.
Thank you.
To you.